We'll bring the guys back with this. During the Cavs' 4-game skid before they won yesterday, the betting odds for the DPOY award changed quite a bit. Evan Mobley, before the 4-game skid, was the prohibited favorite, up to minus 250 in certain sports books. Now, Draymond Green has surpassed Evan Mobley as the betting favorite. He is minus 105 on FanDuel. Mobley's down to 115.
Is that really breaking news?
That is what it's silly to be breaking news. But on the Hoop Collective podcast, which is Brian Windhorst, Tim Bontemps, and a couple others, Windy made some interesting comments on Mobley and his defensive presence over the last couple of games. They're both short, so we're going to play them both real quick. This is the first from Brian Windhorst on the Hoop Collective podcast.
Evan Mobley's status for Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion, has taken some hits this week, including in the game you were at, where Ivica Zubac had 20 rebounds by himself, and the Cavs had 29 as a team.
So that was the first part. A little later in the conversation between Windy and Bontemps, Brian Windhorst had this to say in terms of teams, quote-unquote, chasing Mobley in switches. Steve, let's play the next clip.
And Udonis Haslem was out here doing TV, and Haslem was making great points about, like, teams will try to hunt Mobley on switches, making him switch on to star guards.
Well, it happened last night.
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan, again, Evan Mobley had a 31-point game on Wednesday night. The Sacramento Kings ran plays to get Evan Mobley onto DeMar DeRozan down the stretch, and DeRozan was scoring.
Here's the stupid part of this, Mike. You can't lose it based on 5 games. So he should have. If it's that big of an issue, then he should have never been in the conversation to begin with. That's stupid. What? All of a sudden, 5 games he can't play defense?
Well, let me. I on the surface, you're right. It's stupid. But Mike, let me ask you something. Sometimes teams expose a weakness that becomes a blueprint for how you beat that team. Is this, because I have not been paying close enough attention, and I probably wouldn't even noticed it if I had been looking for it. I don't watch basketball the same way you guys do. Is it possible that in the last month, teams have gone to this as a strategy, and now it's on tape a lot more, and people are saying, oh my God, we can get Mobley on a favorable matchup for us and smoke him. And now teams are doing it because they've seen others have success.
I think a lot of things can be true at the same time.
Okay.
First and foremost, before Wemby got hurt, Wemby was running away with this award. Mobley was in second place.
Yeah.
When Wemby got hurt, it was Jaren Jackson and Evan Mobley neck and neck for the award. Jaren Jackson got hurt. Mobley became the prohibitive favorite.
Right.
I think it is absurd, to Bull's point, that Draymond Green has now surpassed him in a 5-game stretch.
Isn't
when you
it
look at their
infinitesimal?
overall,
what are the odds? They're very close.
They're very close,
anyhow.
but Draymond has come out of nowhere, was not even in the conversation 2 weeks ago.
So
now
dumb.
The betting favorite. When you look at their individual defensive stats, Mobley is a higher defensive rating.
Right.
He has more blocks. Draymond is they're right in the same category for steals, but that shouldn't be a conversation. In terms of the chasing switches, Jason and I have actually talked about this. We talked about it on the Cavs show once, and I think we did it even more last year. I think Evan Mobley is at his best defensively as essentially the free safety of the defense, where you have Allen at the rim, and when a guy gets into the paint, not only is he trying to get past his own defender, but now he has to deal with Mobley from the help side coming over, swatting shots. He's 6'11", he's rangy, he can jump, he gets his hands in the right positions all the time. Do you know how you take Mobley out of that help side position? You chase the switch.
And that's what they're doing.
You try to attack him one-to-one. It is not necessarily an indictment on Evan Mobley that teams are trying to isolate those switches. By the way, the 2 guys that they were referencing in those clips, James Harden and DeMar DeRozan, feel like they can get past any defender in the league, whether they're 6'2" or 6'11".
They're very good.
I think those are isolated situations. I think Evan Mobley is maybe not the best in the league in terms of bigs on switches, but he's in that top-tier category. He's also elite when it comes to rim protection from the help side.
That's why I still like him.
If you have to pick and choose your battle, if you're attacking Cleveland, and you're asking me, what do I think you have a better chance of having success at? Isolating Mobley and having a good scorer go against Mobley, or try to beat a Dean Wade or DeAndre Hunter off the dribble, get to the paint, and then deal with them on top of Evan Mobley coming over for help. Yeah, I think the better defensive strategy is to, quote-unquote, chase that switch.
So, Mike, you're saying that Tim Bontemps and known Cavs hater Brian Windhorst are
Stop it.
lost in the soup on this,
Stop
right?
it.
No, I think, well, the Defensive Player of the Year odds stuff, yes. In terms of, do I think teams may be chasing Mobley switches? Yes, and I think it's more of a compliment to Evan than it is an indictment on what he can
Sure.
do.
Okay.
So all
Yeah,
this
and I
changing in
agree
the
with
voting
that.
is ludicrous.
But no, there's a larger conversation to
Yeah.
the larger conversation to the larger conversation.
Go ahead. What is it?
Nobody knows how to grade Defensive Player of the Year. There's no metric
That's
out
true.
there. There's no like.
Well,
you
there
can,
are,
you-
but
you can look at
you
MVP.
can look at blocks.
You can look at MVP and you can say, okay, well, this is their VORP, this is their PER, this is their points, rebounds. Like this is who, with Defensive Player of the Year. Chris Paul won it because he led the league in steals. Yet you talk to players in the league who say Chris Paul's a terrible defender. He puts his teams in awful positions because he's constantly chasing steals.
So
and he's
again, it's
leaving
which
himself
stat
out
do
of
you
position.
prioritize?
So then blocks. And okay, Rudy Gobert wins. Talk to guys in the league. Rudy Gobert sucks. He should never win Defensive Player of the Year. So there is no great way to measure this, which is why you wind up in situations like this, where over a 5-game stretch, Draymond Green, who, by the way, promoted himself for Defensive Player of the Year on his podcast.
And through
ridiculous.
groupthink, here we are.
And talks more than anybody in the league. And what does Evan Mobley do less than anybody in the league? Talk. So it's all of this stuff put into the pot that I think is how you wind up
And the other thing is, don't tell me that the voters aren't looking at the odds and see who the favorite is.
And the whole thing
and that
is
impacts
ridiculous.
how they
So
vote.
when I voted on this stuff for 10 years. And this was the hardest one for me to get
Yeah,
right.
I can see how it would be.
And I always went to the players, not just Cavs. I covered the Cavs, but I had relationships with other teams, and I'd go to their PR people and say, hey, like, set me up here so I can talk to some of these guys. I'm not going to burn them. I just want to know, like, I got to fill in this vote. I need to know.
You know how you decide that award? And this might be controversial. Let the players pick that one.
But then the
'Cause
players-
I do agree with you. I know it becomes a popularity
Yes.
contest, but I always trust the players on certain things like that. And because there's so many metrics, and you're right, it is. I've always said I use my eye test. But you'd have to watch every single play of every single team of every single game.
For that award, and I always gauge the player's temperature on all of the awards.
Yeah.
But that one in particular, I basically, and listen, I'm not talking to every player in the league, but I would probably talk to all the Cavs at the time, and then probably 10 to 15 fairly prominent players across the league, and try to come up to some consensus. And that's how I voted for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Because I have no great way of, and so that this whole, when I saw this on the rundown, I got immediately aggravated.
Yeah, the whole thing. First of all, I hate awards talk in general, but this is so stupid.
But
the fact that we're caring about the odds,
What-
this guy's leading
what
and
they-
now this guy gets hurt.
They should not be, like, who votes on the awards? You know, there's no great system, there's no perfect system, but the fact that, like, there's financial incentives in these guys'
There are.
contracts
I know.
Right, yeah.
tied
I know.
to this stuff.
This
That's
means
crazy.
a lot to Evan Mobley.
This is
Yeah.
crucial
Huge for Mobley.
to the Cavs' future payrolls.
And by the way, to the bigger picture, it's not just basketball. It's all sports.
Yes,
where
it is.
Like, Defensive Player of the Year is basically the guy with the most sacks, unless it's a situation like last year where the guy with the most sacks was Trey Hendrickson. People don't think of him as the best player, and so we got to pick a guy from a different position.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. Baseball's gotten better as defensive analytics have improved a little bit. And they actually do a much better job giving Gold Gloves now than they did years ago. It used to be
off reputation,
right
solely.
And it used to be if you were a good player, you'd win a Gold Glove even if you weren't good defensively. It just used to happen. Now you have like random dudes. You're like, that guy's a Gold Glove.
And Ozzie
Can't even
Smith
hit.
made acrobatic plays that you know, nobody else could make, and his glove work. Same with Omar.
Yeah.
They could do things that so many other players couldn't do. That they were kind of this, entity all by themselves.
Yeah.
But there were still shortstops that played at the time. If you think about it, when Vizquel and when Ozzie Smith played, that were damn good shortstops and maybe more reliable on the everyday ground ball, but they couldn't make the eye-popping highlight play.
I remember in the 80s, the Mets had a shortstop named Rafael Santana who made
him.
every play.
I remember him.
But he couldn't hit, so he never won a Gold Glove.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't matter anymore. It used to matter. The Defensive Player of the Year, especially in football and basketball, complete joke.
But to take this back to the Cavs, and Mike alluded to this on the rundown, there's major financial ramifications tied to this, both for Evan personally.
So it's political then.
If he
Which is
wins,
stupid.
So his next contract, the max that kicks in next year, is a percentage of the cap. Well, that percentage will be determined by whether or not he makes an All-NBA team. and or if he's named Defensive Player of the Year. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year, it is a significantly we're not going to get lost in the weeds.
It goes from 25% to 30%.
It's bad for the Cavs for him to win that award, which is stupid.
But based on where their cap is and where their cap is going and the aprons and everything else, I mean, Evan Mobley winning Defensive Player of the Year could have a big impact on the Cavs' financial books 3 years from now when they have hard decisions to make on who to keep in.
5% of the payroll in the NBA ends up being a significant number.
It could be, like $10
but
million.
Guys, think about it. How stupid is that?
It
is stupid.
That it's bad for a team for a player to win an award. That makes no sense.
It's just like
it's
baseball.
just like baseball when they get to their incentive.
Bybee finishing second Rookie of the Year starts his clock faster, and it hurts the small market teams.
Players have incentives that if you finish with 30 home runs, then you get
There's a big difference. In baseball, it hurts teams that are unwilling to spend more money. In basketball, you just can't. You can't.
They physically can't spend more because of the cap.
There's
how about
rules
this?
against
How about you fix it by now because then it's a circumvention.
I think those
cap.
bonuses should not count against the cap.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I agree.
It circumvents the cap, but that way the team doesn't have to. Hell, if there were certain incentives. And it's happened, by the way. Team could just bench a guy for the last 3 games or 2 games and not allow him to get to his numbers.
Jason, to put a bow tie on this before we go to Super Chats, do you agree with this part on chasing switches, though? I know that was kind of the second of the layers.
I think you nailed it. Listen, I'll still take Evan Mobley on a guard one-on-one defensively. I think there's certain guys in the league that are going to be able to exploit that, but I don't think it's a high number. Now, having said that, maybe we're totally wrong, and maybe the league has figured this out. We've talked about this with Tyvis in NFL games. When you have something on film, and particularly in the playoffs, if they see it crack, they're going to blow a hole through it. And we'll find out real quick in the playoffs if this is something or if this is nothing. I tend to think this is nothing, and you're talking about really, really good one-on-one players who can get by almost anybody, and I don't think it's a thing. But we'll find out in a few weeks if that's true or not. Mike, agree or disagree?
Once we get to the playoffs,
the list of guys that can stand in front of James Harden and DeMar DeRozan
it's not a long list.
Is very, very, very short. And Mobley, I think, is about as good as it gets in the league in that big category of staying in front of smaller guards.
Right.
And it's just difficult. It's in a
First of all,
disposition.
the size disparity is
and it's the same thing with Giannis. And last point, because we got Super Chats. Giannis is incredible defensively. You can attack Giannis off the dribble.
Yep.
What Giannis is damn near impossible to avoid is when you're trying to figure out how to get around Brook Lopez, and while you're trying to figure out how to get your shot over Lopez, Giannis comes out of nowhere and swats that shit 7 rows into the stand.
Mike's throwing a curse in there.
It's 12:57.